Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the State 911 Advisory Board meeting, and I'd like to advise everyone that this meeting is being webcast and taped as well. I'd like to start with roll call. Sheriff Edward Bonner.
Don Hutchinson for Sheriff Bonner.
Chief Reginald Chappelle.
Dee Dee Teal for Chief Chappelle.
Lisa Hoffman.
Sherry Lynn Rockwell for Lisa Hoffman.
Sheriff Mark Pazin. Absent. Chief Sam Spiegel. I don't know why I did that.
I'm here.
Chip Yarborough.
Here.
Chief Peter Bryan.
Here.
Chris Henshaw.
Present.
Chief Robert Nicoletti.
Here.
Leslie Wilson.
Here.
We'll start with the approval of the March 2011 meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? We can take a few minutes if you like.
I'll move for approval of the minutes with minor correction on the representing California Police Chiefs Association, as I am retired from Folsom PD.
Second by Brian.
Is there a motion to pass the minutes with recommended changes? Oh, I'm sorry, is there a vote?
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I've had only 2 cups of coffee today. The next agenda item is the unfinished business, and there is no agenda item, so we'll move on to reports. Brian Doolin will start with the California 911 Division update.
Morning, Chair, members of the board. I'll be providing an update on those items of interest to the board and the activities on the 911 division. Tracking document labeled handout number 2 is provided in your packet. The handout captures all requests as a result of the 911 advisory board meetings and only includes those items in 2011 going forward. There are 2 documents that we've separated the action items into, one that has requests that are open or pending, and the other document that has all the closed requests for historical purposes, so we've sequenced that for your reference. I'll go over some of the items on that list that are open and pending. I continue to work with the CCTF, the County Coordinator Task Force, on finalizing the charter. The division was targeting April 28th as the completion date. However, I've asked for some additional items to be added. We are extending the completion date to July 2011. As a result of the March 2011 advisory board meeting, the California 911 Division has included an update handout in your packet outlining the State 911 Advisory Board activity and committees, the state active work groups and task force. These changes reflect the board action which moved the PSAP consolidation and hosted solutions, as well as the GIS committees to the long-range planning committee. That document is, I think, in the right pocket of your packet behind the fact sheets. So you want to go ahead and review this and just make sure that the appropriate committees and so forth that you're designated to be on is correct and accurate. Karen stated at the last advisory board meeting that we would reach out to the FCC to have them present at one of the meetings. Due to scheduling conflicts, they were not able to make it today. However, we are hoping to have them come out sometime in September of this year at the next advisory board meeting. The California 911 Division continues to work with L.R. Kimball on regulatory considerations for the California Strategic Plan. This document has gone through several iterations and is in the final review process. We will be sharing the information with the Long Range Planning Committee once it has been completed, and the new anticipated completion timeframe is also this month. We've been working on several reports, so you'll see that some of the due dates that were anticipated for April of this year have been pushed out till June, just because of the review process and just all the different parties that we need to have a look at the document. The technology work group completed 2 issue papers on automatic 911 dialing and recorded messages. So I just want to thank the work group for putting those together and documenting the issues that are impacting the PSAP operations. The PSAPs, and they outline what the actual issues are and also provide recommendations. The work group has also prepared summaries on 6 emerging products and how they affect PSAPs. After review of all of those documents, the information will be shared with the PSAPs and also distributed to the board.
Right, and I just want to say
Yeah.
what a good job the group did. I can't take any credit, even though I'm on there. I wasn't able to participate, but they did a great job, and I think it'll be very helpful for training.
Yeah, actually, this is the first time we've had work products come out of a technology work group like that. So again, I just wanted to thank the group and all the work that has been put into that. I think they were pretty strong documents, and we also shared them with the CPUC recently and asked them to provide some comments as well. So moving on to the outage report. Handout number 3, outage report, was included in your packet. We had 74 outages reported covering April through May of 2011. We didn't identify any routine trends this time. Several of them were due to digging up of lines or weather-related, and we had a handful of community isolation. So that packet is in the right pocket of your packet. The next item is the project reports. As promised in the March advisory meeting, project fact sheets were developed and posted on the California 911 Division website in May 2011. And we have also included copies in each of your packets that you can take a look at. I'll go over those projects a little bit on the update and what's currently happening. The California 911 Division on the Enhanced 911 Grant Project that's happening in the northeast part of California. We're currently working with OTEC to procure the required services needed for the project, establish the operational need for those services. There are a couple of technical issues that we are working on before deploying the next sites in the hosted component of that project, and we're working with Butte County. Sherry Lynn Rockwell is representing the project from the local PSAP area. We're also in the process of installing the second host and adding CSU Chico PD at the end of July 2011. The Routing on Empirical Data project, phase 4, which covers Northern California, is about 95% complete. And this project is basically taking those calls that were going into the CHP and routing them to the local PSAP in that jurisdiction. Phase 5, covering Central California, is about 60% complete. And the last phase, which is phase 6, covering LA County, is 45% complete. The project is currently on schedule. The ECATS project, which is our statewide reporting and tracking system, installation is complete except for a handful of Navy bases. El Centro, Lemoore, China Lake, and Port Hueneme, I think that's how you say it, are the last naval bases that need to be installed. These are non-funded, state non-funded PSAPs, and we've just recently, as of last week, was able to get a hold of the Navy to have ECATs installed at those sites. So we will have a global statewide picture of all of the 911 calls that are going in, even though they're not funded by the state office. So I wanted to, again, thank Dana Earl of the 911 office to establish that relationship with the Navy and get ECATs installed at those sites. Historical data conversion for the ECATs is scheduled to be completed by September 2011, and that's taking all the historical data from the legacy systems and moving them into ECATs to make that data available. The office is looking at hosted projects throughout the state, and some of the areas we'll be ramping up is the Pasadena Ring Project, Imperial County, Ventura County, and Mendocino County, and we'll be reporting on these projects in the future. One last item is informational, which is not on your tracking sheet that just came in this morning, and I wanted to share with the board. A letter was sent June 8th, 2011 to Broadmoor PD and Escalon PD, letting them know they were out of compliance by not taking their 911 calls. The letter from the 911 division stated that they have 60 days to resume operations. Broadmoor PD has not answered calls since April 2009, with the exception of 5 calls on June 25th, 2010. Escalon PD went into alternate answer March 1st, 2011. with no notice to the state. So the California 911 Division will be working with those entities to reestablish operations and with the board on moving forward if they do not become compliant in 60 days. That covers my update, general update. Is there any questions?
60 days to comply.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Our next item is the County Coordinator Task Force update.
Karen, while she's walking up here, I have a quick question. So what happens after 60 days if Broadmoor and Escalon don't respond?
Actually, I'm going to have to defer to Ryan for that question.
We'll actually be looking at what their response is and then probably be coming back to the office if we don't have remedy. The office, through the Warren Act, can engage the Attorney General's office. We would prefer to handle it administratively through the office, and we'll be reaching out to the advisory board on how to then move forward from that. But our preference is to handle it administratively through the office. And we just started running stats through our systems and became aware of this. My understanding is prior to me coming on board in October, there was some issues with Broadmoor, and I'm not sure what those specifically are, but we wanted to bring it to the board's attention to give you a heads up so that in 60 days, we will then be either bringing it to Karen's attention on what the response is and then moving forward with advising the board. But without knowing if they're going to resume operations and we're all going to be good, we don't really have a plan on how to attack it.
So I guess I'm still perplexed if Escalon, shut their doors because they couldn't afford to staff it anymore and they contracted with somebody else, what's the state gonna do?
Well, that's what we don't know. We want to get a response from the entities to see what actually caused it, what the issue was, and then that's when we will be making a decision on moving forward. We don't know if it was a staffing issue, if there's agreements between who's taking over their calls, so those all need to be taken into consideration.
And I would rather have the facts before we start
Right.
deciding how we might take action. So it's going to be really important to get information from the contacts for both Broadmoor and Escalon.
My point is that, where is the authority of the state to do anything? Ryan says to turn it over to the Attorney General's office. Obviously, if Escalon can't do their comm center, they're obviously financially strapped. What are you gonna do?
Well,
We have a couple of options. That's one option. The other option is working on rerouting those calls and shutting down those PSAPs. So there are a couple of options that the state has the authority, given the Warren Act, for us to then enforce. But not knowing the facts, we don't know whether we need to issue a letter for them to shut down officially that PSAP and then work with the local jurisdictions to route those calls appropriate to a active PSAP in that area. So we don't know exactly what we need to do yet. We'd like to get the response from those two entities as to what is the cause, what are they able to do, and if they're able to reestablish operations, or do we need to take another action?
Well, was a county coordinator contacted? Because those calls have to be going somewhere, so like the sheriff or something, so.
Yeah, that's what we don't know.
And
So
the
like I said,
county
on
coordinator has no idea in that
Right.
area.
So like I said, on June 8th, this recently just happened. So I wanted, instead of waiting until September to bring it to your attention, like I said, this just came in my office this morning. I want to give you guys a heads up.
Did you guys contact the county coordinator to find out if they rerouted the calls through the correct MSAC location, or how did you guys know? How did it come to your office, one? And two, why wasn't the county coordinator contacted?
I think we just ran stats within the office, and I don't know if the county coordinator has been contacted yet. But that's a good point. We can go ahead and reach out to the county coordinator. That's appropriate. So we'll do that activity in addition to the letters. The letter has already been sent, but we will contact the county coordinator for that area.
Any more questions? Comments?
Karen, to what extent from your constituent representatives on the board here that would offer Cal Chiefs assistance, and I'm sure CSSA would do the same thing. The calls can't be just sitting out there nowhere. They're in all probability I don't want to probability it, but in all probability they have diverted to the Sheriff's Department. So between CSSA and Cal Chiefs, to what extent we can assist the office and help with an outreach to the political leaders there to figure out where it's going and what the remedy should be. Hopefully can get something done in the short term rather than waiting for the Attorney General to have to be involved.
Appreciate that. We
Yeah,
will.
definitely a good idea. We'll reach out to the representatives on the board, as well as we probably will start working with the county coordinator task force on something like this if we're not able to resolve it administratively within the office, if it needs some additional follow-up and we need some additional resources to get to the bottom of the issue. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Shelby Ryman. I'm with the CCTF and I'm also the 911 coordinator for Tulare County. I am here to give the CCTF update. Since our last update, the CCTF has continued to be actively involved with the MLTS and technology review work groups, having conference calls and discussions regarding these topics whenever our input is requested or our assistance is needed. We have recently completed the installation of the County Coordinator website, which we put together as a reference tool for all the county coordinators to use for website links, contact information for most of the CLECs and LECs and wireless service providers, VoIP service providers, our CCTF contact information if anybody needs to get a hold of any of the members of the CCTF. It also has a link for the County Coordinator Resource Manual, and it has a page for any upcoming events that would pertain to the county coordinator. That website is www.countycoordinator.com if anybody would like to check it out. And it's updated constantly, so. We're also currently planning our biannual County Coordinator Forum, which is going to be held on July 21st here in Sacramento at the CHP headquarters. We're in the process of putting together the agenda items and any discussion topics. And last but not least, we're working with the state 911 office to reach an agreement regarding our charter. At this point, we're working on the language and waiting for charter examples to be sent to us so that we can modify our format. And that's all I have for the CCTF. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
Is the state, are you getting reimbursement for the website now? Is that,
Yes.
so that it'll stay funded and up so that we have that information? And then at the biannual meeting, is it possible that for the first time we could reach out and maybe put those discussion items, are they going to be posted out there so that if you want feedback from your constituents in those counties that they could ask questions or post those questions so that you could address them maybe?
On the website, yes, there is an area for questions to be posted, and for the CCTF or anybody that would be able to answer those questions, they can email them to me and then I'll post the information on the website.
And so will you take those to the biannual meeting and provide that feedback?
Absolutely. Any other questions? No? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item is the Committee on the Outage Notification and Escalation. I'm happy to report that I've been in communications with CalEMA. They are in the process now of reviewing the document that was submitted roughly about a year ago. Ryan and I will be meeting with representatives of CalEMA in the next couple of weeks. And I realize this has been open for a long time. However, CalEMA is now engaged, and we will be getting feedback from them prior to the next meeting. So barring any unforeseen issues, we will have some input from CalEMA on that document. The document, I also had it put into our packet today. If it hasn't been reviewed recently, that way everybody can look at it again. Were there any questions? Okay, thank you. And then the Long Range Planning Committee, Chris?
The Long Range Planning Committee has not met. We had a couple of issues that were pending that have now been added to the meeting minutes tracking document, which is nice to see, so we can start keeping track of some of this stuff. One of the things we were hoping to see in April was the cost magnitude report from the consultants on the Next Gen program, which we didn't see, so that's hopefully upcoming shortly.
It should be out by the first part of next month at the very latest. It did need to go through the state's review process, and we were probably a little bit overzealous in our dates. I like to get things done really, really quickly. I don't like things to wait around, and I think I was a little bit too aggressive on that one. That was a huge task.
Yeah. Since our last meeting, we combined the GIS committee and the hosting committee into the long-range planning. Another one of the issues was now that the state has appointed the GIS manager, we were hoping to talk with him sooner than later. But all of this is all tied back up into the new Bigley King meeting requirements. So I suppose a lot of this is going to have to pen off now until we figure out how we're going to work within those very severe restrictions to getting anything done. Other than that, I have nothing more from the Long Range Committee.
Okay. We will move forward now. Unless,
Karen, before we get
I'm
off this
sorry.
one, Chris, a couple of follow-up items I know that some of us have been working on, and for the board's information, we've been working with Cal Sheriffs, California Police Chiefs Association, and California Fire Chiefs Association to try and find a venue where the OCIO 911 office and possibly some board members, but primarily the office, can make a presentation on the long-range plan as well as the next-gen documents at some conference or meeting for those three organizations. And I know that in working with Sheriff Bonner and Carmen at Cal Sheriffs, that they've given us some information to complete, to submit, to be able to get on their agenda. So we're working on, I think, all three of those, and Leslie may have some update with California Fire Chiefs as well.
I do not have an update from the California Fire Chiefs, but I did talk to John, and it's just a matter of the scheduling, and he is going to contact me probably within the next month.
Okay. And the second item, three of us representing our sponsoring organizations met with Assemblymember Torres and then forwarded some information to her office, and the gist of it was, if you'd like some technical expertise out there, then certainly when you craft legislation or your staff is working on legislation, it doesn't have to be the board, but there's enough members out there that have some knowledge of what we'd like to see, especially in particular with, as we called it, the telecommunications device or systems which make contact with 911 systems that are not the standard system that we've been used to, and encouraging the Assembly Member's office to contact one of the members and talk about legislation and maybe even sponsoring that. So we've had some good interaction, nothing more since April 20th after our meeting, but we'll certainly keep that open, and hopefully some of that long-range planning, we can at least get another ear out there. So thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No one. Thank you, Peter, for taking the lead on initiating a lot of this, because it is really important to get the next gen word out. Okay. On the agenda, it shows that we have a break, but since we're moving along quickly, I just would like to move on to new business. And the first item on the agenda is the Bagley King Open Meeting Act. We have Vanessa Rose from the State Technology Agency that's going to give us a presentation on this. And just as a quick overview, in January 2011, there were some changes to the Bagley King that will impact the board.
Madam Board, members, Good morning. My name is Vanessa Rose, and I'm the Chief Counsel for the California Technology Agency. And I'm here to provide some clarity to provisions within the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act that are often problematic to governmental bodies subject to its provisions, such as this board. I will comment upon teleconference meetings, notice requirements for committees and subcommittees, what is deemed a meeting under the Bagley-Keene Act, along with specific restrictions, and use of electronic devices during meetings. Before I address these points, however, I'd like to mention at the beginning, which is usually left at the end, what are the penalties for violation of the Bagley-Keene Act? A successful plaintiff may recover attorney's fees and costs which are payable from the board's funds. Where a determination is made that an action taken was in violation of a proper notice provision, the action itself will be deemed null and void. The successful plaintiff, again, will recover costs and attorney's fees. And finally, each member of a board that attends a meeting of the board that is in violation of any provision of the Act, and where the member intends to deprive the public of information, which the member knows or has reason to know the public is entitled to, will be guilty of a misdemeanor. Now, turning to specific topics, the first being meetings via teleconferencing, they are allowable when a number of factors are met. Those being a properly noticed board meeting for that particular location. That could be a home office, that could be from a car. What's important is the notice must state that location, and the public must be accessible and allowed into that location. Also, notices of the meeting are required to be posted at that location as required by Bagley-Keene. Again, the public has the same opportunities, such as to comment, as a regularly scheduled board meeting. Notice requirements for committees and subcommittees often causes heartache. What that statute requires is that any subcommittee, committee, work group that, at the behest of the board, is working on board matters or considerations or deliberations, they must be noticed. The same public notice requirements apply. The caveat is 2 members or less, 2 or 1, let me qualify that, does not require board members as part of this number consideration. 2 individuals that meet are not required to be noticed. So 3 or more members on a committee require specific notice requirements. The 10-day posting, everything you do for these regular meetings. So we're talking about task forces and work groups as well. What constitutes a meeting under Bagley-Keene is particularly with use of emails, BlackBerries, and texting. This is a difficult question and often the most challenging question. The caveat here is even where a quorum is meeting to receive information, solely receipt of information, such as at informal study sessions or pre-meeting get-togethers. If you have a quorum, that's going to be considered a meeting, and if it's not noticed, it's a violation of the Act. Even meeting a half an hour before a board session is an improper meeting. Additionally, matters under the board's jurisdiction should not be discussed or deliberated at social settings, including lunch breaks during meetings, which may be deemed a meeting even though no action takes place. The primary concern about determining when meetings occur come into play with the use of blackmails, BlackBerries, texts, etc. As you are aware, serial communications are those that involve less than a quorum, but taken as a whole involves a majority of the board's members. Such situations can arise through communications via phone conversations, emails, BlackBerries, and texting. Which brings me to the final point today, is that our recommendation that board members refrain from the use of electronic devices during board meetings. Such use among board members during an open meeting on any matter within the board's jurisdiction violates the act. Do I have any questions on these comments?
Chris Incha, so in order for me to engage in a telephonic communication with the long-range planning work group from my home, I have to publish my home address, and I have to make my home address accessible to the public in order to be a part of that communication?
That's correct. There needs to be an opportunity for them to show up, be comfortable, sit down, hear the whole exchange, and they're considered a seat, actually a seat of the board. Just as this audience here, this is the public seat.
Okay, in view of technology and what technology provides, if we're engaging in a teleconference communication and the public has access to that bridge, allowing them to hear everything that's occurring on that conversation, why would the requirement remain that there be a physical presence?
The board says a board member has to be at that location. That's the requirement. So like I said, you can be poolside, you could be off I-5 in your car, but if you know that's where you're going to be and that's where you need to join in teleconferencing on a particular day, you got to be able to notice and give the requisite 10-day notice to the public that that's where you're going to be. And in the same time, for 10 days, there has to be a notice at that location saying that's where it's going to happen. And when you're there, the public can bring a chair and sit right along with you or in your car. That's what the act says.
I'm sorry, I have a quick question. So what happens in case of an emergency? You can't have that kind of notification as a meeting not taking place?
Anything that happens during that meeting will be null and void if action is taken.
Vanessa?
The meeting takes place, but you're not participating. Yes?
Peter Bryan, in the case that Chris was talking about, we posted the locations, but you didn't get back to your home office in enough time. You pull over to the side of the road and you're doing it on a cell phone, even though that wasn't the intended location, or something else has caused your schedule to change to get back to this teleconference of a committee. How do you handle that?
I'm sorry, you're saying you didn't make it to the location that was noticed in time? You can't do it. You can't participate. It's very strict. Oftentimes they say, well, how does the public find out? If you're texting up here, and you're texting too. There are public inquiries, Public Records Act requests that can get downloads of what's going on. I mean, we know with the technology what we can do today. Also, when you have serial communications on email, that can all be downloaded. But of course, someone needs to be nearby or suspect that this is happening, and you can imagine the number of scenarios where that can take place. But it has happened. In fact, there's a recent situation where an attorney making calls to members of the board was found to be in violation of the act by conducting serial communications, even though it's a confidential situation where the attorney represents the board. It's still a serial meeting. Any other questions?
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Were there any other comments by the board?
Yeah. In view of this information, we're going to have to make some serious changes in the way we conduct business on the board. It's going to end up costing the state a lot more money because, frankly, I'm not giving out my home address to the public. My wife is a sergeant with the sheriff's department, has worked in the jails et cetera, and my address is not going to become public information. So we're going to have to establish places where we can go to have our meetings that the public has access to, or we're going to have to be flying up here every time we have a work group or a committee meeting. There's going to have to be a drastic change or in the way we conduct all our committee meetings, or we're going to have to abandon committee meetings.
We will need to, if we continue with committee meetings, we will need to post the meeting location, have the members either show up in person or at a place where the public can go, as the outline states. That's exactly true.
And with the governor's restrictions on travel for state employees, you guys ain't going to be coming to us, so we're going to have to come to you. There are no options.
But don't expect being reimbursed, because the travel restriction pertains to those people being reimbursed also.
Well, there you go.
Well, you know, the bottom line is can't kill the messenger. She didn't write the act. This is the Bagley-Keene Act, and not a whole lot different than the Brown Act for those of us that have dealt with municipality issues. How strict the adherence has been to it in the past is certainly up for a whole lot of horror stories. But the changes that were made because of, in a lot of cases, because of some gross violations of things. And I think the situation that we're stuck with here is to try and wade through it and find the most efficient way that we can cause the meetings to occur. We may have to get a little bit more creative with, instead of doing the travel, of finding a couple satellite locations throughout the state for those committee meetings. So, for example, in San Diego, one of your public buildings there with a building where you can do a teleconference and bring the committee together in some means that's somewhere more efficient between everybody jumping an airplane and violation of the act.
There's also the option that we could take our meeting days, such as today, and do committee meetings in the afternoon. And so we would post the day with all of our meetings, and it'd be one posting, and we would find locations in Sacramento while all of you were here.
Well, I think that's one option, but there's still going to be times with the technical working group and other times that we need to meet, and those will just need to be posted, and it sounds like the task force as well is going to need to post their meetings.
Well, and if the governor's travel restrictions are applying to board members also, then we're probably going to have fewer attendees at these meetings.
And I will get clarification on the travel restrictions as it applies to the board members prior to our next meeting. Okay, any other comments, questions?
We can't talk about it. 911 stuff. Thank you.
Okay.
Advisory.
And again, Vanessa, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move to the next item under new business, which is quick and express dial tone. Ryan Doolin. Oh, there you are.
I'm up here again. Just wanted to give a overview of a letter that was received or sent by Joanne Hicks from San Francisco to the State 911 Advisory Board. We've included the letter in your packet on the left-hand side with an attachment of CPUC code 2883 for reference. Joanne Hicks emailed a letter to the State 911 Advisory Board on May 17th regarding the expiration of the current Master Services Agreement. The letter also requests board assistance and describes her concerns regarding quick dial and express dial tone. I'll first address Ms. Hicks' questions with respect to the 911 telephone system Master Purchase Agreement. The contract term was September 2006 to September 2009 with the option of 2 one-year extensions, which we exercised and extended the contract to its current expiration date of September 4th, 2011. The California 911 Division announced at the March Advisory Board meeting as part of the general information agenda item its efforts to issue a new request for proposal for the 911 system and services and the September 2011 expiration date of the current contract. The new RFP was released on April 18, 2011. Approximately a week before the RFP was released, Department of General Services advised the division that all the provisions of the current contract must follow standard contract rules and be executed during the term of the contract. This would include any additional maintenance, which seems to be the topic of Ms. Hicks' concerns. Once we received this information, the California 911 Division and Karen Wong arranged a conference call on April 21st, 2011 to notice the advisory board of the change. Shortly thereafter, the division had calls with the County Coordinator Task Force and the Pasadena Ring Project leadership, as well as issued a notice on May 6th to all PSAP statewide of this change. So there's a very short time frame from when we were noticed of the change to actually communicating that out to all the affected parties. The California 911 Division continues to work with the Department of General Services and must ensure we are following standard state procurement rules and are in compliance. The next item is the quick dial tone and quick and express dial tone. In response to Ms. Hicks' request for board assistance regarding quick dial and express dial tone, the California 911 Division has included a copy of the California Public Utilities Code 2883 in your packet. This code was established as a result of SB 1375, which was introduced in 2010. The issue regarding enforcement of the PUC code would need to be referred to the California Public Utilities Commission and does not fall within the authority of the California 911 Division. However, the California 911 Division did reach out to AT&T and was advised that they communicated their process for dealing with quick dial tone phantom 911 calls to the county coordinators on the monthly county coordinator conference call held on June 7th. My understanding is AT&T will be issuing a simultaneous 120-day disconnect notification for all those cases reported by the PSAPs through the missed route alley discrepancy process. They are currently working on a plan to meet the intention of the code that was published last year. In addition, the division has regular meetings and interactions with the California Public Utilities Commission and will provide any additional information as it is made available. In conclusion, we recommend responding in writing to Ms. Hicks outlining this information. That concludes my presentation on this item. Are there any questions?
Ryan, I have
Yep.
a question. On the additional maintenance, when you reached out to CCTF and the Ring Project, what was their response? I mean, what did they say that would affect the PSAPs?
Yeah, it seems like it was going to be an issue. I think we've included their concerns in the notification, but they expressed the concern to continue additional maintenance and the impact to the PSAPs to get a new PO issued in time to cover the maintenance beyond September 2011. So I've actually directed the consultants in the office to reach out to all PSAPs statewide, which they've done, and we have worked with each PSAP and the vendor community to make sure that the POs are issued and cut on the current contract to extend the maintenance, additional maintenance coverage beyond September, as long as we get the PO in the office.
Well, some PSAPs work with their vendors, but the vendors won't give out additional maintenance past a certain point. So
Right.
these PSAPs are expected to budget for this money to come out of their pocket first and be reimbursed, right?
Yeah, if the vendor does not honor anything, we can only cover what the vendor honors as far as under the current contract. If it goes beyond, let's just say it goes into 2014 and they can't get any additional maintenance beyond that, the state office could work directly with that individual PSAP on a case-by-case basis. That's one option. The other option is that we can look at doing some kind of equipment upgrade on using the current contract that will be in place September timeframe and get those items covered under that. But there will have to be an upgrade that occurs during that process.
So after this current upgrade, let's say you get an upgrade this year, you're 5 years out, so that additional maintenance after that 5 years will come out of the PSAP's budget and be reimbursed.
No.
Well, for instance,
Okay.
the Viper project in Butte County.
Right.
So in 5 years, when we're ready for an upgrade, but we don't know what we're gonna do, so we need additional maintenance. One, the PSAPs as in Butte County are gonna have to come up with a way to pay for that additional maintenance.
It matters what contract you're using. If you're using the contract, the current contract, and you get a PO in, then we will utilize that contract. If you do your upgrade on the new contract that will be issued after September 4th,
Right.
then the maintenance that comes with that upgrade will cover you. And then you have to do another upgrade during that process, during that 5 years and at the expiration of that contract. So we can only enforce the terms of a contract. When the contract ends on a particular date, the contract ends. All the terms and conditions associated with that contract don't go beyond that extension date.
Well,
the end date.
as Joanne Hicks pointed out in her letter,
Mhm.
I thought you guys had to come to the advisory board for any changes that were gonna affect the contract from the 911, setting the funds. Did you guys come to get approval from the advisory board or discuss it? I know you said you brought it up, but you mentioned this quick time frame of when you guys were notified, talked to CCTF, and then reached out to the Ring Project. In that time frame, did you talk to the advisory board, or?
As soon as we were notified, it took like maybe a week to then set up the conference call with the advisory board and let them know this is not a state 911 office provision. It's general contract provisions. We don't have any choice to change general procurement rules. So we have to be in compliance with those rules.
Is this a rule, general procurement rule that's been in effect for a long time? Or then why is it for 20 years it's been in effect that you guys would reimburse the vendor directly?
My understanding is that it's always been in place. These are general contract rules, and when a contract term has a start and an end date, all of your activities associated with that contract have to be within those dates. What happened prior to me coming on board in October, I can't really speak to, but we are making sure that we're in compliance with all of the rules and regulations of the state. So that's why it was noticed on this. And not understanding what had happened before, how the city and counties were utilizing the contract, we just wanted to communicate that out as to what the actual rules are. And there are no changes in the rules. A contract is a contract, start and end date.
I understand that. It's just now all of a sudden this is happening when it hasn't been this way for years. In addition, there's several small PSAPs, especially in the north, that will not have the funding for this. So there's going to be PSAPs that are not going to be able to answer calls if their equipment breaks and they don't have the funding to fix it and then get reimbursed.
Well,
How is that going to be addressed?
If they utilize the contract, it's reimbursable by our office and
But they've
also
gotta
as
pay up
direct pay.
front.
No, it's as direct pay. It's only when you go outside of the contract that they'll have to initiate their local procurement process and then get reimbursed by the state. If they use the current contract or the new contract that will be coming out after September 4th, you have the two options, direct pay or reimbursement.
For additional maintenance under the new contract after September 4th,
Yes,
you guys will direct pay a vendor.
that's right. You're only going to be forced to reimburse if you go outside, like you're not able to get your PO on this contract and you go out on your local contract rules, then you will not be able, you'll have to go ahead and pay upfront and then be reimbursed by our office.
So you have to have your PO on this contract by September 4th.
That's correct.
So that's what I'm saying. If there's a PSAP that doesn't have that PO in 4 years because their equipment expires and they need additional maintenance, and they can't afford to pay for that additional maintenance and they go down, they're down until they can pay for it.
Yeah, if we can deal with those on a case-by-case basis, I would advise those PSAPs to call directly to their consultant, and we will work with them and the vendor to make sure that they're covered and work out some kind of plan. Like I said, we've reached out to all the PSAPs, and we have not had one PSAP come back and say they're not able to meet those provisions. If there is one, please work with your consultant, and we will get a remedy for that.
Okay, that's all.
So just to be clear, that as long as you get your PO in, you can extend your current maintenance contract and be paid directly.
Right.
And then under the new contract, that is also an option.
That's right.
It's just a different contract.
That's correct.
Wait a minute. Under the new contract, it's not an option unless you have your PO under this contract.
No.
What do you don't pay for additional maintenance under the new contract, correct? One after September 4th, if you don't have a letter in before September 4th.
No, those are two separate transactions. If you have a system today,
Mhm.
you use the current contract.
Right.
You have to get a PO in to have additional maintenance on your equipment that you have today. If you're going to be doing an upgrade after September 4th, you're going to be utilizing the new contract that has additional maintenance on its own terms and conditions for that new equipment. And you'll be covered direct pay through the state process for the terms of the new contract.
For 5 years until you need additional maintenance, right?
Yeah, I think it's 5 years, and there may be other options. It's currently in the RFP process, so I can't speak directly to all the stipulations of what actually is going to be in that. But if you do an upgrade on the new contract, you can have direct pay during those terms and conditions with the state.
For the 5 years, but once your 5 years, let's say, is up.
Well, we
then-
hope to have another contract before, I mean, then a new contract has to come after that.
Or it's extended, the existing contract.
Or it's extended, if that's an option.
And just an example, we're at our agency of putting in a new system, and I don't know if that's going to be before or after September. So I extended my maintenance with a clause to get out if I have a new upgrade, and then I'll be on the new contract.
Right, and that's what was in the actual notice. There's a 30-day paragraph or language that we're suggesting PSAPs include in their PO so that they can actually get out of that and then do their upgrade on the new contract. So if you have a specific issue that you're speaking about, Sherry Lynn, please contact our office and we can work directly with that. Any
Hey,
other questions?
Ryan, on the
Yeah.
EDT, QDT
Yep.
issue. There are some 2 million EDT, QDT lines existing in the
That's
state of
correct.
California
Yep.
that are currently in a state of disrepair and getting worse, generating a lot of phantom 911 calls, and that's increasing. And particularly when we move into the rainy season, we get a big spike in those. In accordance with the new provisions and the regulations, those EDT, QDT lines are supposed to be disconnected.
Well, actually, if you read the actual code, it allows the carriers, it says may be disconnected. So there's no enforcement. My understanding is there's no enforcement as part of that code. And that's why we needed to defer
Okay.
that to the.
And I understand that part of it. The part of it that I have a concern with is that the continued existence of those EDT, QDT lines in a state of disrepair causing phantom 911 calls is an impact directly to the 911 system and the 911 PSAPs.
Correct.
Which are under the jurisdiction of the state 911 office. And what will the office be looking at to address, providing that the EDT, QDT lines are not disconnected in a timely manner, the increase in phantom 911 calls affecting the system and affecting the PSAPs?
We currently work with each of the carriers, so we meet with them on a monthly basis. And we will, I've added this to our action list. We are looking at publishing the process for these type of phantom calls and making sure that all the PSAPs have that process to report nuisance phantom calls, and that we will be following up on a monthly basis with the carriers to ensure that they do the disconnects or what their plan is. Unfortunately, just under the code, there's no specific requirement for them to disconnect that. So our enforcement part of that is just working with the carriers on good faith right now. So, but we will be actively engaging with the carriers on a monthly basis and following up on that and see if we can do anything as far as the calls going into the PSAPs.
I would hope that we can work out something with the carriers so that once the PSAP has identified a phantom 911 issue on a particular line, that we can do something to undercut the 120-day proposed notification for disconnect.
Yeah, I think there's a provision in the code that it's actually 90 days. and AT&T, with their own process, has extended that to 120, but you have to give at least a 90-day notice. Their internal process is 120 days. I haven't been able to get the Verizon process, but there is a requirement in the code for the 90-day notice.
Then perhaps we need to go to the CPUC and discuss with them a provision for an emergency disconnect for a line that's identified as problematic.
Yeah, that's a good, actually, suggestion. We meet with the PUC on a monthly or every other month basis, and we can definitely engage them and see if there's any other alternative that we can start looking at. That's a good suggestion.
Thank you.
Ryan, I have a question back to the new contract going into effect September 4th. Have you and Karen given any additional consideration or thought to the concept of self-maintenance? As our service levels and the PSAPs continues to deteriorate with the 911 service providers, you know, many agencies are considering to do their own self-maintenance, and currently, as you have explained to me, there is no way for a agency to be reimbursed for that same service, but obviously of a higher quality that my own staff provides.
Yeah, we've actually had some internal discussions around that. There's a couple of items that we want the board to consider before a proposal comes forward. And that has to do with not just the activities, but also the liabilities and the terms and conditions that are afforded by the actual contract. The PSAP would be taking on all of those terms and conditions that the carriers currently have with service level agreements and liabilities and anything that comes or is included in the contract. So, you know, I think what is probably a good approach is the board look at if there needs to be a proposal to come forward on that and probably discuss at the board level and then submit a proposal, have us review that, and then we can comment back on those issues. I know that you brought it up as a general discussion, but I think there's more elements of just the actually activities that can be provided. I think we have to look at all the terms and conditions that the carriers are held to in the contract.
And this is one of the items that we talked about deferring to the technical committee, because there are some technical impacts, and I think we have really good people on that committee that could help work through this process of what should be the recommendation that will come up to the board.
Thank you.
Okay, were there any other comments regarding the letter on the maintenance contract? Okay, or the CPUC code 232883? Okay, thank you, Ryan.
I think I'll stay up here because I think I'm on the hot seat for
The
the next one
next
too.
item is CPUC MLTS E911.
So the California 911 Division filed a response on June 1st with the CPUC regarding the Administrative Law Judge ruling 10-04-011. In our response, the division committed to researching MLTS test practices in other states and collecting additional data on the effects of MLTS testing on the local PSAPs. The information will be used to provide MLTS E911 testing guidelines for California. The division also requested the CPUC consult with us before the final publication of the PBX 911 advisory brochure, and we will be taking these activities. Our target date to get back to the PUC is by September 15th. We will probably be looking to engage the CCTF in helping us carry out those activities to get the information back from the PSAPs and do some kind of survey so that we can establish some kind of guidelines with response to MLTS. There are approximately, don't quote me, but I think there's about 17 MLTS E911 active legislation across the nation. So there's only about 17 states that have active legislation right now regarding this. This is not a mandatory enforcement, but it is the CPUC's outreach to try to deal with MLTS 911 and provide more accurate location information at the businesses throughout the state of California. That concludes the update of that item. Are there any
comments?
questions?
I just want to make one comment that I know that I reached out to some other PSAPs, and there's some language that I think is a compromise, and I hope that's being considered. I believe it is. But again, this goes back to some other things that need to be discussed with the state and the county coordinators task force, and having some standards for that job and that position, and what's required, so that there is fair distribution of those services and reimbursement for what they do.
Yeah, as you can imagine, we have 465 PSAPs across the state, so to come up with one shoe-fits-all kind of approach is probably not going to be the way for us to go. I did receive your information on some language compromise because you had reached out to your PSAPs in your area. So we're going to be doing similar outreach with the other PSAPs throughout the state. The other thing is I will be following up. We did not include the actual response in your packet, but I will be distributing, just like I've done in all the FCC responses, I will be distributing that to the board, so you'll have the official comment of the state. So I'll be sending that probably, well, actually this week I'll be sending that out via email to you guys. Any other questions? Okay, I think we can go on to the next one as well.
Yep, Next Gen 911.
So the California 911 division, this goes to some of Chris's comments on the rough order of magnitude costs. I know everybody's kind of sitting on the edge of their seat for how much is Next Gen 911 going to cost the state of California. We continue to work with L.R. Kimball, which is our consultant, on the rough order of magnitude cost estimate for the Next Gen 911 network. There are a lot of moving parts to this, a lot of analysis that has to go into evaluating our current legacy cost, and what kind of architecture are we going to consider in the next generation 911 environment. The final is currently under review and will be shared with the Long Range Planning Committee once it's completed. The new anticipated completion timeframe is sometime late this month or the first part of next month. Like I said, it's in final review, so we have all the content. It's just about making it easy to read and to make sure that the story is easy to understand, since there's so many different components to this.
Yeah, Ryan, my biggest concern about this issue is that in order to increase the size of the Setna war chest to be able to address the Next Gen 911 issues that are coming forward, we're going to have to get approval from CPUC to increase the rates without an apparent immediate need to do that. And we're going to have to coordinate with the state budget committees so that they understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, so that we have monies in hand to be able to address the Next Gen 911 issues as they occur. So this cost order of magnitude thing is going to be extremely important. And it's going to have to be very precise so that we can sell that in the legislature and with the CPUC to start preparing for what's coming. I mean, we know it's, 3-4 years down the line, and we need to be prepared for it before it hits us.
Yeah, those are definitely good points. This is going to cover the Next Gen 911 network. There are other elements of Next Gen 911, as we shared with you during the public meetings, with governance, operations, impact, legislation. There's a whole bunch of different major elements that are going to be part of Next Gen 911 that the rough order of magnitude cost will not cover. but they are covered during the roadmap, and several assessments and so forth that need to be done as part of that effort too. So there are a couple of different activities that are going to impact how next generation is going to cost, is going to be funded, and those things will have to be looked at holistically to make the case for the legislature to look at setting an increase for the rate and other funding mechanisms like grant funding, so that we can start reaching out for other funding models that are out there to supplement and do trials and so forth. Again, you know, California is looking at stepping out in front. So right now, we're getting a lot of traction. We have a sense of urgency in this area. We've made a lot of progress in the last 6 months. So we're going to go from, you know, middle of the pack or not even on the radar to in front of the pack. So with that comes a lot of risk, and we need to make sure that this is all managed risk. So the more data that we're putting together, the better that's going to be.
Any other questions or comments?
Karen, I have one comment and one future agenda request.
Okay.
The comment is I contacted the county coordinator for Escalon PD and already got a response. Escalon PD decided to shut their communication center down because they could no longer afford to staff it, and they have contracted with Ripon PD.
So that looks like it was a local agreement to take the calls.
Right, but
Yeah.
you know, I guess I could further go on is that you know, the county coordinator was aware of this, and you know, she didn't know that it was her responsibility to notify the state that this had happened, which goes to my point that if we had a procedure manual, a training manual for the training coordinators that was adopted by the state, we wouldn't even probably be discussing these topics. The next thing is I'm making a request of the office that at the next board meeting, I would like to see the last fiscal year reimbursements for 911 county coordinators and year-to-date for this fiscal year for county coordinators, and then a separate list that shows who the state has as a contract employee or contracts with someone to perform those tasks in the state.
All centered around the county coordinator, so who we have to contract, you're not looking, which I don't mind providing. All of our contracts or the contract for county coordinators?
Just the contract for county coordinator.
Okay, I just wanted clarity.
I mean, and let me clarify is that if they're a county coordinator and they work for the San Diego County Sheriff's Office, I'm not interested in that information. But if they are an independent body and they contract to provide that service, I'd like to see how many the state has of those.
Okay, we'll be glad to put that on the next agenda along with the data.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
I do. Chip, just to let you know, the County Coordinator Task Force does have a County Coordinator Resource Manual. It's not adopted. The state hasn't officially recognized it. If we've provided it to them before, and if they would like to adopt it, that'd be great, and we could add that. It's not in there that you have to notify. We've never even spoke of that in the manual, but just wanted to let you know it's out there.
I mean, you know, if the state's going to start taking legal action, if we decide we can't staff our comm centers anymore, then, you know, the state probably should have a policy that says that.
Yeah, we'll have to look at, in the operations manual, it's incumbent upon the PSAP when they make changes like that, and another entity is taking their calls, that they notify the state office.
Well, Ryan, I've been in this business for 32 years, and this is the first time I've ever heard that.
Okay.
It's part of the WARN Act, and so if it hasn't been articulated in the past, we apologize. But we will be, if we need to notice the PSAPs and let them know that this is part of what they need to be alerting us of, we'll be glad to do that as well. The more communication that we have with the PSAPs and knowing that the requirement, the better it is for all of us. So it's probably one of our items we'll add for communications.
And I certainly applaud that. It certainly has not been past practice.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, we'll move on now to
Well,
announce.
one other item is the final report
Oh,
on
I'm
Next
sorry.
Gen 911. So we also continue to work with L.R. Kimball regarding the final report on Next Gen 911. There were 5 major themes identified as a result of the verbal and written comments during the public meetings. Those areas covered what does Next Gen 911 mean to California, training and support areas, cost and funding for Next Gen 911, the importance of standards, and in maintaining privacy within the Next Gen 911 area. That final report is currently under review and will be shared with the Long Range Planning Committee. Again, the new anticipated timeframe is the end of this month. A lot of what has hindered us on getting these out is just the review process. And we're just making sure that we have captured all of the comments. There was reams and reams of public comments that we had to go through, discussions at the board level for each one of the meetings, and making sure that we captured all of the thoughts. So we had to go through all of the videos in each of the locations and make sure that we caught all the dialogue. So it's the report. I'm pretty happy to say that it's well articulated, in my opinion, and I'm really happy with the outcome. I think we're just finalizing, dotting the I's and crossing the T's on it. So I'm really happy with the outcome of that product. Any questions? Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. And now we'll move on to announcements. And the first item on the agenda is the Emergency Alert System Test. And we have Michael Cruz from Cal EMA.
Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about emergency alert system. First off, let me introduce myself. I'm Michael Cruz from the California Emergency Management Agency. I'm the program manager and have oversight of the state's interoperability program and also the state's alert and warning program. For the next 10 minutes, I really just want to go over briefly on what EAS is, the Emergency Alert System, why this test is occurring first off, third, why this is relevant, I think, for the PSAPs and for this board, and lastly, what we need to do to prepare for it. So the Emergency Alert System, first off, is a national public safety system that requires broadcasters nationwide. That includes also cable and satellite providers to notify the public and essentially broadcast messages from the president in times of emergency. The system can also be used by state and local officials really to deliver emergency information. I think most of that information that's, I think most people are aware of, amber alerts, imminent danger, and also information for the National Weather Service. Now, the FCC, in cooperation with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and NOAA's National Weather Service implement EAS at the federal level. Authority to activate that system falls strictly under the President of the United States. Now, statewide here within California, activating EAS falls under the responsibility of the governor, Cal EMA, CHP, and I think the National Weather Service, and that all depends on the type of emergency. A good example of that is amber alerts. If they're statewide amber alerts, normally CHP sends out those notifications statewide. Now, local governments also can activate EAS, which is probably our most common use of the system itself. A lot of local government agencies do use it for imminent dangers, amber alerts, and so forth. Statewide activations are very rare. I think, in fact, the last time we've had a huge statewide notification that came from the California State Warning Center was probably back during the Loma Prieta earthquake. So, and then also for federal activation of EAS, is it's never occurred in the last 60 years that we've had this capability nationwide. So really, and of course, EAS went into service back in 1997, and if most of you recall, prior to that we had the emergency broadcast system. If you recall, the old, your television would come up and you'd have the gentleman that would come on and say, "This is only a test," and you'd hear the iconic tone that would come up, and you'd hear that annoying tone for the next 2 or 3 minutes. And then prior to that, we had Conelrad. So you could see, really, we've had this capability for a long time. So in 2006, FEMA, in coordination with the FCC, really looked at exploring ways to essentially modernize EAS. As you know, it's been around since '97, and part of one of those initiatives that came out of FEMA was the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. It's commonly called IPAWS. I don't know if many of you are aware of it, but essentially this initiative is really looking at how to modernize EAS, not necessarily replace it, but as you know, most people aren't sitting in front of their televisions. Most folks aren't listening to AM, FM radio stations anymore. Really, a lot of people carry cell phones. So really, IPAWS is looking at ways really to disseminate information more quickly and to various different mediums. And that initiative is taking place right now. Of course, and as part of that initiative, FEMA and the FCC had proposed testing EAS. As you recall, I mentioned it's never been tested. A national alert has never been put out in the last 60 years. So of course, that announcement was met with some controversy and with some concern, not only from the National Broadcasters Association, and its partners, but also it's an unfunded mandate and so forth. And the biggest concern right now with the national test is outreach to the public. Folks may misconstrue the test as something, particularly if they're not aware of it. So as you can see, what I'm getting to is if a national test were to come out and people aren't aware of it, there could be some panic or some issues with the public in regards to seeing something that comes on the television. People need to verify that information, and if they're not aware of it, outreach is probably going to be our biggest effort that we need to undertake. So on June 9th, actually just last week, we were aware that this test was coming. Folks were trying to prepare for it, but an official date and time had not been released. Some of the biggest issues was, of course, coordinating and making sure they can find a time that would accommodate all the various time zones within the U.S., and also it wouldn't conflict with any other important dates within the year. We were just told that it was going to happen around the fall of 2011, and that was it. So last week, a public announcement went out from the Public Safety, Security, Homeland Security Bureau of the FCC, essentially said that the test will occur November 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Which I think during October, you fall back, I think Pacific Standard Time, I think it's about 5 o'clock our time here in California. Within the test itself, broadcasters are mandated to send out this notification. The test will probably last approximately 3 minutes. Right now, there's still planning underway to determine what the content of that test will be, background on the screens. Essentially, they're still developing and planning a lot of that information. So really, what's going to be important about this is my biggest concern, and of course our biggest concern at CalEMA. We've been collaborating with the California Broadcasters Association for the last several years on this. We had a meeting with them about 2 months ago prior to this press release, but our biggest concern is outreach. And this is why this is important to this advisory board and to your constituents, is that if the public is not aware of this test, you may get bombarded with phone calls within your 911 center asking, is this a real emergency? What's going on? And as you can see, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on November 9th, depending on what those shift changes are between personnel and PSAPs, people are just coming home from work. really it's going to hit us hard with not only at the California State Warning Center, we're really looking at doing some planning on how to educate not only PSAPs and other government agencies and get this message out that this is only going to be a test.
Didn't you say it was 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time? That's 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, not 5 o'clock.
Is it? Oh, you know what? You're right. Sorry. See, trying to do the math. Even then, 11 o'clock is still. Okay, I'm embarrassed now. Okay.
That's all right. I don't mean to embarrass you.
Yeah.
But I think there is a difference between a test at 11 o'clock in the morning.
You're absolutely
and one at 5
right.
o'clock in the afternoon.
See, I came from Hawaii, so I'm always thinking going back. So, but anyway,
Well, it's still back.
nevertheless,
That'll be 9 o'clock.
which would be much better, I guess. Prior to people going to work. Nevertheless, I think the message is clear that I think outreach really, and the whole point of my message here, my announcement, is that we need to get the message out to folks, particularly the PSAPs, the people that, all the public safety agencies throughout our state that this test is coming. I really, and you know, we're not going to be able to get outreach out to everyone, but I think as long as we start coordinating with the California Broadcasters Association, the cable providers, satellite providers, and so forth, that I think it's going to be important. The big thing is, what do we need to do to prepare? I think for the PSAPs and the State Warning Center, I think the most important thing right now is once the test occurs to monitor it, monitor the test, and monitor the transmission, be prepared for incoming calls. And for more information on this, I know that the FCC and FEMA both have information on their website, fcc.gov, the FEMA.gov. I know that their blogs are probably the most up-to-date information where they're posting. And of course, on CaliMay.ca.gov, we're going to start setting up a specific landing page with our PIO to get that information out to people. So I am open to any questions or comments if you have any.
Michael, I think if FEMA and CalEMA put 1/10 the effort into what we did for Y2K, I can't imagine that this is going to be the doomsday that some anticipate. I think certainly since Y2K to now, in 11, 12 years, I think that our consumers and the people that are receiving this messaging have become much more educated, at least from a technology standpoint, that if we can just get some of the local media to pick up the story well ahead of time and get it out there. I don't want to discount the importance of it by any means, and it will be an impact on our PSAPs, but I don't think it's got anywhere near the magnitude that we were pushing with Y2K.
I agree with you. I agree with you there on the comparison between the outreach for Y2K, but again, at the same time, I don't want to, I don't want to essentially minimize the importance of this, and of course, there's still going to be some type of impact, and understandably, we're not going to be able to reach everyone, particularly in a state of 38 million people. So, any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And then I have two additional announcements. I'd like to congratulate Michelle Bland with the CHP and Jim Thompson with the 911 Division for receiving the Best of California Outstanding IT Service and Support Award at the California Government Technology Conference in May 2011. Both Michelle and Jim received the award for their efforts on the 911 Routing on Empirical Data project. And again, I'd like to congratulate you. Michelle's here today, and reach out to Jim. It was their hard work really paid off in making this project a success. And then I'd also like to congratulate some 911 dispatchers, the 911 dispatcher Richard Seaver from the CHP Bishop Communication Center, dispatcher Jennifer Abel from the CHP Stockton Communication Center, Joel Guest from the Citrus Heights Police Department, and Lisa Dawson from the Elk Grove Police Department for receiving a local 911 Hero Award at the 911 for Kids Hero Award ceremony, which was held at the state capitol and very well attended, I might say. I was very pleased with the turnout on May 12, 2011. So I just wanted to congratulate all of those folks. Were there any other announcements from the board members?
Yeah, the next CalNENA quarterly meeting will be on July 28th in Simi Valley. And since I won't be here at the September meeting of the advisory board, I'll let you know now that the NENA, or the CalNENA annual conference will be in San Diego January 30th and 31st.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Okay, and then we have one public comment. On our list, it's Joanne Hicks.
Good morning. I'm here to address my letter that I sent to the board, and I want to thank you for reading it and taking the time to let me speak today. QDT, I think when I wrote the letter, I stated it was 90 days, which I thought was exceptionally long time to do a disconnect, and now it's 124 months. On many of the calls that we dispatch on QDT, there's no merit. The customer or resident is not even aware that that service is in place. If I take the time to report it to the DUI or DIU unit, I would like to have my requests for immediate disconnect honored and taken place. It's a disruption not only to my center, to the officer who has to respond, but it's also a disruption to the resident. San Francisco is currently entertaining and working with our alarm manager, false alarm manager, to include QDT in that ordinance. So the first call out would be no charge. The second call to the same address, there would be a fine or a fee associated to it, and then that increases up, and I can't remember if it's 2 or 3 more times. And I didn't bring that ordinance with me, so I can't really speak on behalf of what that cost would be to AT&T. On the contract, I'm very disappointed that the language was not included in there to support years 6 through 10 or years 6 through 15, whatever that might be, on our maintenance of our equipment. Not all PSAPs are ready or able to do either an upgrade or a replacement. And I'm speaking again on behalf of San Francisco. We are in the process. We know that by probably 2014, we will either do the upgrade or the replacement of our equipment. We are not ready to do that today. So we have to go through with the extension of our current contract. One equipment expires, it has already expired. We've gone ahead and gotten the quote for that and issued the PO. It took quite a bit of time to get the M1 quote for extended maintenance, and at one point we weren't even certain if that was going to be successful. AT&T actually came through for us, and we have that, and we have issued the PO, and we have issued direct payment requests to the state office. My concern moves forward with a contract. It's just language that has to be included into a contract that would include any service that was paid for on an expired contract. It needs to be included in the language in the next contract to cover the additional maintenance. It's not to say that the PSAP wouldn't have to still get a quote from the vendor and still issue a PO. I don't think that's an issue. I think the issue for me was the fact that I had to do it by a deadline date. It should be more in line with maybe 6 months prior to expiration that the PSAP is now required to do a quote and present it to the state. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
And that is all of our public comments. We're at the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.